Hello, I'm Dr. DenitaHedgeman with the Moments on Waiting talk show. This show is about encouraging people to be more prepared, productive, and wise during their waiting experience. Each week, we will focus on different topics from my book, While I Wait, that will give solutions to the waiting journey. Today's topic is Surefire Ways to Land a Job. Every year, the job market gets more competitive with thousands of people applying for the same job. Today's guest will show you ways on how to stand out among all the other applicants and get the job of your dreams. So let's welcome to the show Mr. Rex Gibson with the City of Memphis. Hi, Mr. Gibson.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hedgeman. How are you this afternoon?
I'm wonderful.
Great.
So welcome to Moments on Waiting.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, great. Well, first of all, a lot of people have heard of the City of Memphis. What does it do, really?
Well, the City of Memphis, the whole purpose of the City of Memphis is to serve the citizens of this great city, and that's the mission of the city itself.
Okay, now what are the different divisions? Because a lot of people know that the mayor works there, or they have his department.
There are various divisions within the City of Memphis. There's the Parks Division, Public Works, there's Police, Fire, Human Resources is one of the divisions for which I work. Yes. And there are several other divisions within the city of community development and all those areas out there for the citizens of the city.
Well, now you said you're in human resources.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been in human resources?
Well, with the City of Memphis, I've been 8 years. I'm a testing and recruitment coordinator for the City of Memphis, in which I work with industrial psychologists to ensure that candidates are qualified based upon their knowledge, skills, and abilities.
And how long have you been in that industry?
Oh, I've been in the industry for over 20 years.
Wow. So where were you before City of Memphis?
Before the City of Memphis, I've worked for some of the best organizations within the City of Memphis, within the Mid-South. I've worked for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I've worked for the Bonner Children's Medical Center. I've worked for Mississippi Valley State University. And my career began with actually Catherine Stores Corporation and distribution as an HR manager. And I also worked for Federal Express.
Okay, well that sounds really good. Now tell us this. What is the City of Memphis looking for in a candidate?
Oh, you know what the City of Memphis is looking for is what every employee is looking for, and that is a willing worker. We often don't think of that, but often we'll apply for a position not really willing to do the job. We want the job, but not necessarily want to do it. And so it's important that a candidate understands the job, posting the job announcement, so they can understand whether they really want to do the job. Because if you don't want to do the job, you're not going to be successful.
Exactly, and they have to know exactly what they want, what they're good at, and really what their purpose is.
Right.
A lot of people don't know what their purpose is, so they are applying all over the place because they just want a job and not really build a career.
Correct. Exactly. You're absolutely right. We find that often when we accept applicants. Currently, I am recruiting or testing for fire division and fire recruits, and it requires a lot of physical as well as mental strength. And we find that although the candidate sees the fire division and firefighters as those who serve and those who help, they don't understand the entire scope of what it takes to be a firefighter, because all our firefighters have to be paramedics within 3 years of being hired. And so it's critical, again, like you mentioned before, that you look at it as a career, look at what you're looking for, and see and decide whether or not you're willing to make the sacrifices to go along with it.
And it is sacrifice.
Yes.
Especially with a firefighter. They have to be away from their families. Yes. And how long do they have to be at the station?
It just depends on the shift in which they work, but because every firefighter must be a paramedic, it's critical that they understand that not only will they be hired, but in a 3-year period, you'll be taking classes, you'll have to meet the requirements to be a paramedic. After that 3-year period, you'll no longer work for the city if you can, as in that capacity, if you do not pass the paramedic requirements.
Okay, so you just talked about requirements.
Yes.
So companies look for skills versus experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, we look for skills. I think skills, the question is whether the skills are more important than experience. I think skills are critical. And that goes to another level of branding ourselves and also our development of ourselves. But the skills are important. Experience is more important normally when you're looking at a promotional opportunity. I've been with the city 8 years, and I have worked with 3 other of my colleagues, and I'm second in seniority in that area. But the one with the most seniority has more knowledge than I have and more experience, even though I've been there 8 years. So she's valuable to the organization, even more so than I am, because she knows the history of what happened. So experience is critical. Skills are very important as well.
Give us an example of skills.
Oh, well, one of the skills I think of quickly, and most people do, are keyboarding or clerical skills. The city of Memphis hired a lot of administrative support, and with that, we test them as well. There's reading proficiency, there's writing from a rough draft, there's editing from a rough draft, so that we can test all of the skills. Those are all skills necessary to be successful as administrative support. So keystrokes and keyboarding is critical. Our minimum is 45 words per minute. A minute for a top level, the Secretary A. However, keyboarding is not as critical as it used to be. Editing and formatting is, because of the computer age and because of all technology. You can make corrections, but you have to be able to write, you have to be able to edit documents.
What about soft skills?
Oh, soft skills are critical as well. When we think of soft skills, when we think interpersonal skills, customer service skills, it's so critical because, you know, when candidates call, well, not candidates, but when citizens call the city of Memphis, they never know who they're going to reach. They don't know if they're going to reach HR department because they may be transferred incorrectly to a department. Whoever answers that phone, be it an administrative support person, be it a manager, be it someone even working in public works, it doesn't matter. That citizen recognizes that person is representing the city. So when they call, we have to know how to answer the phone with a smile, and it sounds as crazy as it sounds, but and I'll say I'm going to smile before I pick this phone, and then answer the phone. Because that citizen has a need, whatever that need is, we need to meet it immediately, but we also let them know that they are important to us and that we consider them value to the city.
And as technology is growing, I always tell my students to learn more computer skills, and as more people are coming into the country, they need to be more bilingual, and even to work for the CIA, you have to know Chinese. And a lot of people don't know that. So you really have to research, and that's what I want to get into. How important is it to research a company?
Researching a company, even if it's a company which you're currently with, when we talk about promotional opportunities, we also talk about coming from the outside, is again one of the key factors in being successful. We were talking about before how sometimes you're not prepared for interviews, or how you're not prepared to even ask the correct questions during an interview. Research is what is necessary. I'm trying to give a good example of what, when we talk about researching a company, the first thing to do, of course, is the job description. The website is also available to you. There's no reason at this point, no reason in this day and age when you cannot find out what you need. One example, in interviewing, one candidate that I was familiar with was interviewing for a job and went on Facebook, went on and looked at the person, found out the person who was interviewing them. It was a Skype or a phone interview. I can't remember what the details were, but because of that, there is a connection, because they found out the history of the person who was with the organization. That's most critical when a person's been interviewed. But again, the company knowledge is very important, and we expect you to know that when you come in, because otherwise you're just another applicant.
Right, and understanding the industry, that is very important. And when people call in, or that's the first question they ask. What do you know about our company? And then they'll tell them the basics. Oh, you started in 1927, your CEO is this. But I always tell them, you know what, really Google and see what they're doing in the community. And you can say, oh, well, you know, I looked at your website and I noticed that every year you give back to the Ronald McDonald House. So I would love to work for a company that gives back to the community. Those are brownie points.
Definitely.
You know, I remember one time a student was interviewing for First Tennessee, and all she said was, congratulations. And they said, for what? You're number 4. They knew that they were the number 4 company, really, the 4th company to work for. So little things like that will help you also get that job.
Exactly. And I think you're absolutely right. Making the connection with the company and who you are. We can talk about even in that, if we look at branding ourselves. Branding ourselves is knowing who we are, not being who someone else wants us to be. It's critical that you fit into an organization, but if you have the self-confidence that you need when you walk into an interview or walk into a company, then you're viewed as being valued, and you create your own value. And you do that by developing skills, interpersonal skills, as well as knowledge about the organization and knowledge about your industry. As you mentioned before, industrial knowledge is critical. And if you don't know what the company does, then you're not going to be a good fit.
Exactly. Now let's go to dress. I see some of everything when you go to career fairs.
Right.
Tell the women, what are they to wear for an interview?
Oh, there's not a strict rule. There are guidelines per industry, depending on the type of job you're looking for, and that is how you prepare. If you're looking for a job in the fashion industry, in retail, then you dress a little bit more fashionable than you would if you're going into a corporation that has strict rules. The key is knowing that organization. You can go on their website, you can look at their dress code, the pictures that they show, the people that they show. That gives you a good clue. But normally, for basic to be careful and to be considered by everyone, you're going to want to be conservative in your dress. Limit your jewelry, limit your earrings, limit your makeup. Pearls is always good. We always like to see women in pearls. But pearls, navy suit, dark suit, gray suit, slacks are okay, but tailored. Jackets are okay, but jackets should come to the mid, at least below the hip. And the reason is because you're trying to present an image of professionalism and not one distraction. Now, we've had many candidates who come to us, and especially female candidates, who feel that if they're seductive, then they'll get the job. And that sets another tone for the organization, and that's an issue that the organization does not want to deal with when you come into the job. So they figure you're going to be a problem. Oh my God, here we come to cleavage, and then of course that's distracting sometimes to the men in the office, and the next thing you know, you'll have some other issues legally that a company does not want to deal with. So they do want you to be professional. Women pumps, not 6-inch pumps, that's conservative in pumps, and length of dress. Fashionable, but not short.
Right. And I always tell people don't wear black, only because in social etiquette, black is formal.
Exactly.
So stick to the solid colors, the navy blue, gray, taupes, browns. Always wear stockings. I know they don't want to hear that. No toe-out shoes, sling back.
No slings.
Right. A different ring on every finger. And if they have braids, then they need to pull them back. And a nice bun, because they don't know who's watching them. Even when they're filling out an application, they should still dress professionally, because the CEO could be walking by.
Well, one of the issues that come up, and when you mentioned hair, you mentioned a lot of women, especially African American women, are born natural with their hair.
Right.
And again, culture is what's critical. So if you know the culture of the organization, if they're progressive, then you may say, well, this may be okay.
Right.
If not, and natural can be beautiful.
Yes.
It just needs to be neat.
Right.
Because what happens is sometimes it can be misconstrued as not being meticulous about your appearance, even though it is natural.
Yes, because I counsel my students, if I see that natural look, I try to help them on ways that they could try to pull it back or up, or maybe, and you know how they do the little nice puff, pull a headband around, because you don't know who's interviewing you. And I always tell people, know really who's interviewing you, whether it's a baby boomer. They're not going to like a lot of the things that we do, and we're going to discuss tattoos and nose rings. They just don't like it. So you're not going to get that job. If it's a Generation X, you might. Generation Y, they understand about the newer trends. So that's why it's so imperative to research that company. Now, men, what do they wear?
Men, we're safe with navy blue suits. And if you're a student, graduating student, and you may not have the full wardrobe, and that's with anyone, black we will accept for men. Again, it is a formal. However, that's not a taboo. Navy blue blazer, gray slacks. And there's a shopping tip. Can I share?
Yes, please.
Often we're because of our economics, where we are economically, we're looking for a job, and everyone expects us to have the newest thing, the newest suit. There are some great places to shop, which may be quality, but may not necessarily be expensive. One of the places we like to think of sometimes is Goodwill. I guess I'll plug them today. But often you can find a blazer. You may not find a full suit, young men and young women. Take it, have it clean, and put a nice white shirt, crisp shirt, go buy a new shirt. You can find ties at places like Goodwill. And you can dress yourself look professional and not spend a lot of money. Because if you're looking for a job, sometimes you may be restricted and feel that you can't go out.
Right.
So don't let that stop you. Find other ways in which to you borrow clothes.
Exactly.
All sorts of there. Churches offer clothes closets,
Yes.
and other nonprofit organizations as well. So there's many ways to dress without having to go to a necessarily name brand store or to spend a lot of money. So I think that's critical when we're looking, because some people will not move any further because they think, I don't have the right thing to wear.
But they do everything else,
Mhm.
and I always tell people,
Mhm.
you have a birthday and Christmas.
Right.
So instead of saying, Mama, buy me the latest iPad, or boyfriend, buy me this latest watch, because I see my students with
Right.
Gucci things, all these expensive
Right,
things, but then
right.
they don't want to invest in the interview suit. So
Sure.
you say, well, Mom, just buy me a nice blazer.
Right.
Dad, just buy me a tie.
Mhm.
Boyfriend, just buy me a belt.
Right.
You are now building your interview wardrobe, and you can wear the same suit. You can just change it up, and
Or change your tie. yeah.
right, different ties.
Yeah.
Ladies can maybe put a scarf on.
Right.
There's so many different things you can do, but I really feel you should invest in your future.
And I totally agree with you with that. And with that, if you have the tools in which to do it, if you have the resources, that's great.
Mhm.
But also never let it limit you from going out. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yes.
But I think that you remind me of my grandson, who for Christmas we bought him a coat because it was Christmas and it's cold, and he got the coat. And we bought him toys too, but he said, his grandmother, he said, Gigi, he said, toys, it's Christmas.
Right.
But we as parents and as professionals, we see a need, and we should see a need for our children, even those parents, and this is for parents as well.
Yes.
We know that our children and our young adults are moving through and matriculating through high school and college. We need to make that one of our priorities as well,
Right.
to sacrifice sometimes and make that happen for them.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, the next tool you need to
Mhm.
use is what? A resume.
Yes.
Now, there are two types of resumes, a chronological and a functional. Quickly tell us about those two.
Well, chronological is just that. It lists your history, your work history, usually in chronological order, with most recent going back. It just tells where you've been and where you want to go. Most resumes have not necessarily an objective as much as it has a profile, and it depends on how long you've been in the workforce. If you're entry level, you're going to have an objective. If you've been in the business and industry a long time, then you'll have a profile that gives a brief summary of what you've done. Now that's chronological, most recent going back. Now the other type, and you know how I feel about the functional resumes, is for those who probably their work history has been not steady, or they may have gaps in it, and also those who've been in the workforce for a very long time that don't want to reveal so much about their age because of issues such as age discrimination. So functional works very well for professional because it breaks their resume down into different categories based upon their expertise. It may be, let's say, in HR, it may be labor relations, then the other may be benefits, the other may be recruiting. And so depending upon the job, that particular subject matter goes up at top, but it's also critical that you use quantitative data on the resume. Quantitative data. No one wants to hear that I'm a go-getter or I'm a people person. That does not work on a resume. When I'm reading a resume, I'm looking for what have you done? What are your numbers? You've increased, employment, or you've increased turnover by decreased turnover by how much, and that type of thing. So we always look for numbers. You save the company how much money? Those are the kind of things you want, results, and not just fluff, as we call it, a resume.
And sometimes I tell people to look at the job description ahead of time,
Oh, yes.
because they might scan that resume to see if it's going to pick up the
Right.
keywords, or now you have to apply online.
Right.
They're looking for the keywords.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So you have to change your resume really to match each job.
Definitely, those are targeted resumes is what we call those.
Yes.
You target the position. So you may have a resume, a general resume, but you take that resume and you make it what that job requires. Like I said, the keywords are critical. They'll scan because no one's touching those. Everything's electronic now, and so it's important that you have the keywords. But also, we don't talk about cover letters too often.
That's the next question. So you go ahead and tell us about the cover letter.
And the cover letter itself, that's one way of identifying your strengths, and it's one way of putting in the keywords as well. Keywords are critical in the cover letter. The cover letter is a general overview of your resume, but it should address what's that job description looking for. So if the job description is looking for someone who has 10 years experience in human resources, with 5 of those years being recruitment, then your letter should say, I have 10 years or more of what you're asking for, plus 5 years of recruitment. So that's how you tailor that letter. It should not say again. It should be general, a dear company. You find out who you're writing this letter to. If whoever, hiring official is always good. Dear hiring official. Now, if you don't know, because you never know who the hiring official is, it may be a director, it may be a manager, it may just be the administrative assistant. You never know who's going to be reading that letter. So refer to them in a manner in which it would be professional, and it'll also be acceptable to them, and so you wouldn't offend anyone who's reading the letter. Mr. and Mrs. Dear Miss, if you do not know the gender of the person you're writing, do not put that in. There's some names you can't tell. So you don't want to be out there and offend someone and never make it past that interview, make it to an interview.
What about the thank you letter?
Oh, the thank you letters must be immediate. We use email a lot to thank you because it's convenient, and handwritten notes are critical. Handwritten notes are critical. You may do a quick email if you feel that it's important to get it done quickly. Do the email. Once the email is done, make sure you write a letter and you send that letter handwritten to that hiring official. Everyone on the panel while you're being interviewed, make sure you get names, contact information, get titles. It's critical. And so if you have a question, even in the interview, and please may I have your card. If I don't have your card, may I make sure I have your title correct, because I'll be sending you a thank you letter. Not only do you send it, but you tell them you're going to send them one, and then follow through, because then it shows that you have the ability to follow through.
Exactly, because you might have 2 or 3 people interviewing you.
Right.
So let's move on to the interview.
Right.
There's a traditional interview, behavioral, panel, telephone.
Oh, yes.
Just break down at least the traditional interview and the behavioral interview.
Traditional interview is usually one-on-one. It's usually not panel. And it's usually going to be direct questions, open-ended questions. It will not be the ones. Those what have you done? Let me come up with a question. When have you performed this job? Or in your resume says that you've been a recruiter. Tell me about your recruiting experience. That's pretty much going to be a traditional interview.
Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses?
Strengths and weaknesses and those kind of things. Whereas when you look at a behavioral interview is designed and states that your past performance predicts future behavior. And so if you perform whatever you've done in the past will predict how well you do in the future. So we'll ask you a question such as, give me a time in which you performed this particular task and how you handled it. Or give us a time when you dealt with difficult people and how you handled it. Give us a time in which we were unsuccessful and how you handled it. It's all about how you handled the past to determine the future. Now, you may have handled it incorrectly. You may have felt, I've handled it this way, but going forward, I would handle it this way. You turn the table so it doesn't look as if it's not a negative, it's a positive because it's a learning experience for you. And employers like to know that you've learned, because mistakes will be made. And so no one's perfect. So don't go in thinking that every answer is a perfect answer and that you've done everything perfectly, because sometimes we do make mistakes, but it's okay as long as we learn from them.
And I tell applicants to always have 3 to 5 questions ready to ask the interviewer, because at the end they'll say, do you have any questions? And they say no. That's a red flag. They're not going to hire you. You say no. So you have to come up with your questions, and that's why I say 3 to 5, because they might have already answered them.
Right.
Now, how do you seal the job? Like really ask for the job at the end, your closing.
Wow. First of all, I think you sell yourself. It's all about that branding that I was talking about before. You walk in with confidence, you'll walk out with confidence. Not intimidated, because you've already answered the questions, so you're already prepared. So now that you've gone through the entire process, it's time for you to shine. This is your moment. They ask you if you have a question. The question you should always ask is, how long do you think it'll be before you make a selection? And if I'm one of the final candidates, how long will it be before I hear from you? If I'm not a final candidate, how long will it be? But you don't want to go there. You're going to be the final candidate. So you seal the job saying, I've read the job description, I've interviewed with you, I've been impressed with the information I've obtained from you today. Even more so, I'm more excited than I was when I walked in the room. Please let me know when you'll be calling me for the job.
Right.
Sell it. You've sold it. And whether you get that job or not, that thank you, as you mentioned before, is critical, because it may not be the job, but that same organization may have been so impressed with you during the interview that they'll call you back, and I've seen it happen. Right. And you may be the number 2. It's okay being number 2. It's okay. Because at some point, that Cinderella team becomes the top.
Now what about networking?
Oh.
That's crucial.
Well, for some, networking seems to be natural, and it's based upon social skills and how one is exposed. But at the same time, it can be learned. And the critical part of that is one of the ways that networking is volunteering. We're so afraid to volunteer. We think that we have to get paid for everything. I won't use my daughter. She may watch this show, but I put her through an internship program, and she said, well, I'm not being paid. I said, you are being paid. It's value added. So when you go on an interview, you say, I volunteer for this organization, and guess what I learned, and guess what I contributed, and guess what I added, and those things are critical. So that's part of networking. Networking is attending any event in which there are people there that you have an opportunity to interact with and to impress. Even if it's if you're cleaning up, if you're doing something out in a community and cleaning the grounds, there's someone there who's going to recognize you for your service, because service speaks.
That is absolutely right. It's always who you know.
Right,
So
right.
I always tell people to take their resumes, no matter where you go, your USB. And now, what I really want the young people to know, let's quickly, before we go, talk
Right.
about social media. You have to be careful who you friend, who you put out there, because now companies look at your Facebook page
Right.
and they'll decide, I am not going to hire this person because their friend cursed or they had some vulgar things on that page, or they looking at your beliefs.
Right, right. Critical. Your Facebook and your social media tells a lot about who you are. So it's critical. We all have friends who probably we've grown and we've matured past their level. Even I have a friend from high school who actually, what can I say about him? He didn't mature at the same level, and so he placed some things on Facebook that I would not agree with and not be a part of in this part of my life. When I was 19, yes, but this is much later. So it's critical that we choose our friends wisely on Facebook. Everyone who, it's nice that I have 100,000 friends or whatever, but it's not. What it is, the quality of your friendships and the quality of the people that you're around. So you want to make sure your Facebook reflects you. Now there's more than one address, and people come up with different names for their Facebook, but believe me, employers can find them. They will find you, and when they find you, they'll make an assessment based upon who you interact with. So be careful not to use language that's inappropriate. Even in email addresses, I've had some very interesting email addresses on the resume. Crazy stuff. I mean, things such as your boo, my boo, or whatever.
That's horrible.
Things like, things that you're like, okay, this is not professional.
Right.
And it's okay that you have a different email for your friends. You don't want that same email address anyhow.
Right.
Create an email account with your name inverted, however you want to do it, but you want it to be recognizable to who you are, because when you send an email, even if you send one to the person who interviews you, you want them to know who you are as soon as you send the email. And so you don't want to be some oblivious name that has no meaning to anyone. But if you have it as professional, like a last name, first name, or however you wish to do it, but never include things which are personal.
And that voicemail message, they have songs on there, rap songs, all that. The employees do not like that.
No.
But now, before we leave, I want you to tell the viewers 3 ways that they can really land a job. Number 1.
I think the first way to land a job is based upon your faith and your belief. Again, to believe in yourself, but you have to have something else to believe in. You have to believe in a higher power, because it's the strength that you gain. And the word is that they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. And we get weak in our search. We're talking about waiting. This program is about waiting, and that's not to answer your question. Sometimes it takes 6 months, 8 months, a year, or longer to find a job. How do you endure that? It's again waiting patiently. So number 1 is waiting.
Number 2.
Number two is being prepared. Make sure that you review, be prepared for the interview, cover the information we discussed a minute ago about the companies, what they're looking for, review the job description, make sure your resume matches that. Even the application is done neatly when you do complete an application if it's not online.
And number 3.
Number 3, be yourself. Be proud of who you are. Present yourself professionally and dress professionally.
These are wonderful tips. I just thank you so very much for coming on to our show. I know the viewers are going to take these tips and run with them, and we know they will get the job of their dreams.
Right. Well, we thank you so much for inviting us, Dr. Hedgeman, and I again wish everyone the best in their job search and everyone the best in what their goals that they're trying to do.
Well, you have been tuned in to Moments on Waiting. I'm Dr. DenitaHedgeman, and I will see you on next week.